Hello everybody. Today I am going to record a video, and it is going to be from File New Project, and we're going to create a calculator in WPF using a Prism application, MVVM. I am doing this. I have not built this before now. I just want to do this so you guys see some of the bugs that we hit, some of the hiccups, but mainly so you can use Prism and Unity and a WPF application. Of course, the implementation may be a bit different for you guys, but we are going to focus on building this. So let's just start. We're going to use Visual Studio 2017, and it's opening on the other page, I think, or the other screen. So oh no, it opened here. Okay, so we're going to hit File after it opens, New Project, and we're going to choose a WPF application. We're just going to save it to the desktop, and we're going to go ahead and for some reason it's giving me a hard time. Call it a calculator. Okay. Alright, and now we're going to go ahead and add to source control, just so we can commit this as we go. Okay, and we're going to say create project. Oh, it already did it. Okay, I thought it didn't. So now we're going to hit reference, manage NuGet packages. Go ahead and do this, and now we're going to say prism.unity. You could use pre-release, but I don't want to do that. I just want to use the latest stable. I'm going to hit install. Honestly, I have not used the newest version. I almost always use 6, just because I've been using it for a long time. So let's do a few things here. Now there's a few ways you can start this up, and we're just going to do the best, the recommended way. So the recommended way is to actually delete main window and go to app XAML and delete this. Okay. Now that you do this, you go ahead and open this. I personally like to create something app start. Okay. And add a new class here. It's going to be called a Bootstrapper. This is going to be a public. It's going to be a Unity. Okay. I'm using ReSharper for you. If you were interested, you can actually go to Tools, Extension and Updates, and type ReSharper here. There it is. Download it and install it. It is paid, but you get 30 days free or something along those lines. Okay, I'm going to create a new one called Views. Okay, and a new one called folder called ViewModels. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add a window. It's going to be called Shell. Okay, and this will be called Shell ViewModel. So what I like to do is create another folder in here, call it base, and add a new class and call this ViewModelBase. Okay, and basically this will allow us to you know, do a lot of really neat things that we need to do. So we may or may not need to add some properties to this later. In a big application, you know, you can have multiple view model bases, but right now we're just gonna go ahead and leave this like this. Close out of everything. We're actually gonna reopen shell view model. Forgive me. And derive this from ViewModelBase. Okay, now we have those. Create a constructor. Okay, let's get rid of the using statements. And to do, alright, we'll now go to Bootstrapper. And our goal right now is just to simply get our shell to display instead of our main window that we just deleted. So we're going to override, create shell, and we want to return a container, resolve, and you can actually do this. And do that, you will need to, using Microsoft.practices.unity, we'll need to add that as well. And that doesn't do exactly what we need. That creates a shell, but if I were to run it, I'll go ahead and show you, nothing actually shows up. And that's because it doesn't know, well, first two things. We haven't done this yet, so we go into our application.xaml, need to override on startup method, and we just need to say new bootstrapper. Oops, that was the wrong one. And say .run. Okay, now in Visual Studio, if you do not have ReSharper, you can actually do this. You can actually hit Control period, and that will open this and say remove unusing. So that will do all that. Alright, so there we go. That has all our so now we'll run this, and this will actually get hit. If I put a breakpoint here, it will actually now get hit, but our window still doesn't show up. You see, it does hit, but our window doesn't show up. That's because we have to tell it to show it. So what we need to do is override initialize shell, and we just need to say application.current.mainWindow.show. Okay, and technically you could put a question mark there because ReSharper tells you to, because there's a possibility of null, but you know that it'll never be null because you're creating it right here. And if it actually, I prefer not to, because if this doesn't work for some reason, you have a much bigger problem. So we're going to leave that off. Okay, so now let's we want to make sure that we're actually starting our program up, which it opened on the other screen, and here it is. So you see it's shell and it's a blank page. Now we want to bind our we want to make sure our view model is bound, so we're going to say call this cool calculator. I can't type tonight, sorry about that. Now we run it, and we're actually going to go ahead and create a property here. Sharper is giving me a hard time. Okay, and we're just going to go ahead and say get. We only want it to be able to get it because we're never going to change it. So we're going to now say, call it cool calculator. And that's probably spelled wrong. Okay, that's okay. So let's go ahead and hit run, and we see that we have some errors, which I'm not sure what's going on with that, but let's look. It says it doesn't like this. So why doesn't it like this? So what we want to do is say title. Oh, I'm sorry. And we'll just say title. I had 2 curly brackets in there instead of 1. Alright, so we run it and we no longer have the title, and it's also not saying cool calculator, and that's because we need to add something. So we need to add a namespace here. So we're going to say prism. It's prism library. Please note that that is important. We're going to say prism.viewModelLocator.AutoWire. Oops, we want that to be true. Alright, so now when we run it, it should actually show the title. And it does. So now you see that. That is great. So I'm going to go ahead and create the UI first. And that's because I like to do that so I know what exactly I'm working with here. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to say grid.row definitions. Row definition, and we want this to be a height. We're just going to say actually star. We're going to duplicate that. Oops. So now we're going to say row definition, height, auto. So the rest of them we want to be auto. And I think that we want 6. There's 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, and the reason I do this is simply so that we have even spacing between the top and bottom on the thing. So let's just say grid.row or column definitions. And now we want to say column definition with star. Do the same thing here. I'm not sure about that. There might be one more than that. But anyways, if there is, we'll add it then when we realize it. Alright, so first things first, we want to say, let's split this here, and let's bring this over and put it on the side. So now we can see it as we type. I personally like to do that. Some people only like to show the code, but that's okay. So we're going to add a text box, and this is going to be grid.column1, grid.row1. Okay. And we're now going to add a button. grid.row2 and grid.column1, and in the content we're just going to say 7 because the top is always a 7. And let's look. We do not have a button here. Oh, we do have a button. That is perfect. So now we want 8 and 9, which is going to be in 2 and 3. And this is going to be 8 and 9. Okay. And now let's just copy and paste this a few times. Okay, so now we want all of this to be row 3, and I am doing this by holding Alt and dragging and clicking the, the left mouse button and dragging down. I apologize for that. I should have alright, so I'm going to do the same here. Okay, and I am going to make this grid.column_span. I'm going to say 4. Okay, so now this will be, we actually only want 2 on this right now, so we're going to say this is row 5, this is row 5. We could have done the same trick I showed you a few minutes ago. We actually want this to be grid column span 2, and this is going to be row 3, or column 3, forgive me. Content is going to be a dot, and the content here is going to be a 0. So let's look at our, we have all our buttons that do not look very good, I know that. So now let's add a little bit of styling, and we have a text box here. So that's perfect. So let's now add a little bit of style. So let's say window.resources. Let's add a style, and our target type is going to be a button. We have a setter that the minimum width property is going to be minimum width, going to be 50. Minimum height, property, value is going to be 40, and we're going to have a margin of 5. And I'm going to, well, now we have some buttons, so that's pretty good. I think that is a little too wide, so let's make that a square and see if that looks a little better. I think it does. Alright, so now let's add our text box. Setter, and I have a property of a border, value, and I'm just going to say black. See if that works. Alright, let's see how that looks. You cannot see the text box at all, actually. Okay, so why is that? It's there. That's because this is a text block, not a text box. You see that? Alright, so no wonder I'm having such a rough time here. Alright, so now we can probably all together get rid of this. Yeah, now we can see it. So let's put that back on because we still want it. So there's that. Now that looks pretty good. Let's make this, let's go ahead and actually it might be D width. I honestly don't remember what it is. So what we can do, because we know that we stored it, let's go ahead and check what our changes have been, and we can go ahead and click this. See our title, here's our width and our height. Let's just go, I thought that it was in their thing, so we can actually say width. We'll make it 300. See how that looks? No, a little bit too big. We'll say 275, and our height is going to be 350. 300. Alright, and these actually need to be a little bit bigger, so let's make it a 60 and 60. See what happens. Minimum width and minimum height. Alright, and now let's make it 50. I think that was giving us grief. There we go. Alright, so now we have our window. And we should have... Oh, but it does not look very good because we don't have any margin at the top or bottom. We actually want it like this, so let's make this a little bit bigger. We're going to go ahead and add 50 pixels to it, so it's going to be 50. Go ahead and make this 300. Okay, run that. I think that's going to look a little bit better. It does. Now what we want to do, we want to add a couple more buttons here. This is going to be column 4. This is going to be plus. This is going to be a minus. Needs to be column 4. This is going to be times, and this will be divide. Okay, so now we have that. We actually are going to need one more, but that'll be alright for now. Let's run it, make sure it looks good on here. I think it looks alright. I want the text box to be a little bit bigger and the text in that text box to be a little bit bigger, so we're going to do that. So let's have our height. So that looks pretty good. Alright, so now we want to do just a few things here. Alright, so we already have this, which wires are, wires are view model up. What we want now is to, when we push buttons, we want to display what we pushed in here, and then when we push equals, which we don't have a button for yet, we want it to calculate it. But first things first, all we want to do is push buttons, and when we push them, we want them to display the value in there. Alright, so let's look where we're at on time. I don't know, it doesn't show me. I'm going to hit pause for a second and look at that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and it looks like what we have to do here, we're going to go ahead and go to our shell view model, and we're going to, I have a code snippet, and I'm going to only type this out one time for you guys. Actually, I'm just going to use the code snippet because it's a lot easier. So I'm going to put a type string. You may or may not have to type this out. This depends if you set up your own thing. And we're going to put this calculator text. Okay, so we're doing that. What we want to do is go ahead and put text mining. Okay. Now when we push a button, we want it to display something, so we're going to go ahead and create a command. We're going to use Prism's delegate command. to call it. I'm just going to call it add number command. We also want to use command. Okay. And now this would be something you would want to do in your ViewModelBase here. You'd probably want to create a constructor. There's mixed emotions about this, but I personally like to do it. I'm going to create a protected virtual void, call it register commands, okay, and call it here. Okay, now there's mixed emotions about this because some people do not like to call virtual methods from abstract class. So we want to make this abstract as well. So that said, I'm doing it because I like to do it because it saves me typing later. So we want to override this. We want to register commands. We want to add number equals new delegate command, add number. Okay. And we're just going to say calculator text equals 5 plus equals 5. Okay. Now when we want to say setter property command value, this is going to be binding to I forget the name of the command. So that makes it not a very good command, doesn't it? Or very good name. So now when we push this, it should just show the number 5 in our text. And it does on all our buttons, which is what we want. Okay, so now what we want to do is pass this in. And honestly, I've never attempted this, so I may or may not get it wrong. So forgive me if I do. But what I would like to do is pass whatever's in the content in there. So what we want to do, let's create a setter and a property. Oops. Command parameter. Where is it? Value. We're going to bind to a relative source. And we're going to say relative source. Ancestor type. And X. Let's go ahead and say content. Hello? I'm sorry guys about that. I got a phone call right in the middle of the video. So now we're back to it. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. I've actually never tried to do this, but it would be great if that did. So let's go ahead and just run it and see what happens. No, it's not going to like it. So there just has to be a way to do this. Oh, well, that's probably why. So let's put a breakpoint in the view model on our null, so that's not working. What if we make it an object and see what comes through? Still null, so that's not going to work. So there absolutely, I'm sure, is a way to do this. We might be able to do relative source self. Try that. So yeah, that's what it is. You have to put that as relative source self. So that is good. Now that should just work. Great. So now we just have to calculate that, which is perfect. Exactly what we wanted to do. Okay, so give me just a minute here, and I'm actually going to take just a quick break. I will be back in 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm back. Alright, so what we want to do now is we actually want to calculate our calculator test when we push equal. So now we need to add an equals button, which we kind of already have a perfect square, and we don't really have so we'll just add one more here with a clear button, and then a equals button underneath it. So let's go ahead and go here and copy this and make this 5, right, and make this clear, and then one more here, make this equals. Of course, you can add as many buttons as you want. It'd be 5. Alright, so now we're running into a few issues here. We need to actually add one more column. We also, oh, no we don't. We need to make it wider. Make this 350 as well. Okay, and now you see our text box is not wide enough, so we need to edit that. Alright, so let's look at it now. Alright, so now we want to add a command for clear. So when we go 89 plus 99 and we hit clear, it adds CE. I knew that would happen. Let's go ahead and just add a new delegate command. And it's going to be clear command. This can clear command equals, I'm just going to say clear. And to hit clear, we can simply say calculator equals string.empty. Now that should clear it. 88 plus plus 99 and clear. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, that's because we didn't do this. Clear command. Let's copy that. Add a command. Okay. $88 plus 99 and clear. Alright, so let's add another command. Call this equals command. Alright, so now what we would like to do is, because we want to keep separate items and follow solid principles and so on and so forth, we also really want to do this. We're going to go ahead and create a new folder. A lot of times this would be in another project or something along those lines, but I'm not going to do it there. I'm just going to do it here and call it a core. I'm going to go ahead and add a new thing and call this calculate works. Okay, and now I'm going to add a new item. It's going to be an interface. There it is. We're going to call it an iCalculator. Okay. It's going to be a public interface. Remove these. We're going to go ahead and... Alright, so I personally think we should use a double. Calculate. And string and expression. Alright, and that's actually a little better in name. So now that I think about that, I would like to change this to expression. And by pushing Control RR, you can do that. Okay. I don't want it to do a whole lot of things, so I'm just going to so it updated that as well. Let's copy and paste this, and let's go to shell and make sure that this is updated as well. We probably need to test this and make sure that it still works. 88 plus 99 and clear. Yes, it still works. Good. I like expression a little bit better. That's just simply because, well, I like the thing a little bit better. So now what we want to do, we also want to create a calculator. Okay, so I did. And say public. We want to say iCalculator. Implement the missing thing. This should be pretty simple to do. Let's go ahead and say our data table. Equals new data table. Okay, and now we want to say var value equals data table dot compute, and go ahead and say expression. So that's actually an object, but we want to return a double. So let's go ahead and now say to double value. That should work. Let's go ahead and create a unit test for this, just for good measures. Right click, create unit test. I'll bring this up, and we can rename this should calculate. And we should say and let's go ahead and do this as well. Calculator dot calculate expression. Let's go ahead and say var value. And assert dot r equal. I'm going to go ahead and say value and 4. It's backwards. Alright, so let's go ahead and clear our namespaces, run this, need to build it, open Test Explorer. You can go ahead, and I usually just go to the top and type Test Explorer if I can't find it for some reason. So let's run all. It does work, and that should work. Now we have a bit of an issue that I would like to talk about here. So let's create a test method and go ahead. Well, let's get this working first, and then we'll get into that in a little bit, and some things that we can do to prevent it. Right, so right now we have an I calculator and we have an expression calculator. So what we want to do, we want to register this with Unity. So app start, I'm going to go ahead and create a new class. It's going to go ahead and be called, let's go ahead and say, we should have been doing this all along, and that's my fault. I just got carried away. We're going to go ahead and say command button's working. So now that it commits, that will allow us, if we mess up, we can go ahead and come back to this commit at any time we want. Alright, so let's go ahead now and add a class. Go ahead and call this Unity config. Make him a public static. And then we want a public static. Oops. Unity container, and this is going to be register instances in this Unity container. Okay, and we're going to return container. So now we say container.register type calculator. This is going to be expression calculator. Alright, so let's go ahead and implement this as well. Configure container. I always want to leave that because it doesn't hurt anything, but if you don't have it and you need it, then you know, I just always leave it. So container.register instances. Now you can see that's there. Now it should register them. And now when we add an I calculator in here, implement it or read only. So now we have an equals command. We also need to add an equals command here. And let's go ahead and say calculate. Alright, so now we can simply say expression equals calculator calculate. We can say expression dot toString. Alright, and I personally only want to see 2 decimal places. You can put as many as you want. So I'll set in 2, go ahead and run it, and now this should just work. We're going to go ahead and say 3 plus 3, and then we say uh-oh, because we forgot to add that to equals calculator to the button. Plus 3, and it shows 6. We say 75 times 2. Nope. You see that? There's a bug right there. What we want to do is after we've hit equals, we want to clear this out so that we can start typing again. Alright, so let's go ahead and store a value here. Let's go ahead and make it a private field. Make it Boolean as calculated. And that will default to false. So what we want to do is if has calculated, then we want to say clear. And we also want to say has calculated equals false. And we want to say calculate has calculated equals true. So now we're going to say 3 plus 3, or 3 times 3, that equals 27. We say 75 minus 10. Notice that cleared that out. 65, we say 99 divided by 3 is 33. Say 100 times 1,000 is 100,000. So looks like our calculator is working. And we can hit clear, it clears it out. Looks like our calculator is working. So let's go ahead and make a commit. So now we actually have a working calculator, and we didn't get too much into learning too much about some of the things I said, so I'm going to start diving in a little deeper in the next video. Thanks for watching.